The internet lost its mind when this watch was teased by Daniel Craig, hyped as the Rolex sub killer at almost half the price. Some called it Omega's best watch yet. Now, hype was rampant, but does it live up to the claims? Can it outcompete the reigning king of dive watches? And I have one big gripe with it though, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. This is the no-date Omega Seamaster. As a little note as we get into this review, most of you that are watching actually don't subscribe. Please do, if you have the time, hit that subscribe button. It's an old antiquated metric that YouTube all uses, but it helps me get my hands on these watches to show that people are actually watching this channel. So please do me that favor if you could. Thanks. Now let's start with the basics. Omega has shipped away the date window. It's silly, it's small, but it makes the dial look pure, undisturbed, and it gives us that fundamental charm of a classic dive watch. But does symmetry matter that much? To me, honestly, yes and no. I often think it's overused as a reason why someone doesn't buy a watch because they say it breaks up that symmetry. I don't make a buying decision based on a date window or lack of date window, but I do agree that the execution on this new dial, because of additional changes as well, makes it more attractive. The dial is obviously the focus of this new watch because the rest of the watch remains relatively the same or basically the same as all the other Omega Seamaster 300Ms. It's boring, it's black, it's also stunningly executed. It's black ceramic dial etched with laser engraved waves that subtly catch the light every so often. And other times they blend in almost like they're not there at all, which gives it a sort of depth every so often without being flashy. See, the version of these waves are actually tighter of a pattern than the standard date variant of this model. You can see the two next to each other. The hour markers here, though, remain the same, filled with generous layers of superluminova. They are bright and crystal clear. It actually features a neat trick here where Omega's using this contrasting lume colors of blue and green. So blue for the indices and green for the minute hand, so that timing underwater becomes intuitive, even under stress. Honestly, I think it's more of a party trick than a practical thing, but I think it's kind of neat to see a little bit of contrast late at night. For all you manufacturing nuts like me, this dial is laser cut, as I said before, but this was cut with a femto laser. It's used also for LASIK surgery. It's a laser that shoots short bursts of light lasting only a femtosecond, or 1/4 of a second. So it's these really short bursts of obviously high precision, hot lasers that are able to zap through material and blaze it away, creating this wave pattern. Just a neat thing. And as you all know, I'm a manufacturing nut based on my background, so I like to throw tidbits like that in these reviews. Now let's step behind the curtain for a second and talk about how Omega makes these watches, because that is what's, I think, genuinely impressive, especially given the price point. Now, Omega's production facility is a blend of meticulous human craftsmanship, but mainly cutting-edge automation. CNC machines that sculpt the cases out of solid stainless steel billets or blocks, ensuring precise tolerances down to fractions of a millimeter. Robotic polishing units deliver consistently perfect finishes that human hands would have just struggled to match after day to day. Omega's commitment to quality doesn't end though at manufacturing. They have automated assembly lines with robotic arms carefully positioning the bezel insert inside the bezel, guaranteeing perfect alignment each time. No crooked bezels here like with Seiko. Now, each watch undergoes rigorous pressure testing in automated chambers to validate the 300-meter depth rating. This is a METAS certified watch. Obviously, the master chronometer nomenclature makes people very excited, but basically it just means fits for power reserve, runs consistently throughout the mainspring or most of the mainspring, has water resistance up to its rated depth, can resist 15,000 Gauss of magnetism, which is ridiculous. No one's going to take this into an MRI machine, and is accurate more than what you would find in a chronometer, standard chronometer certification. The movement inside here is a caliber 8806, which is assembled in a controlled clean room environment, tested through Omega's stringent METAS certification, guaranteeing unmatched precision and anti-magnetic properties. It's also a nice looking movement. You can see all the shots here. The 8806 here powering the Seamaster is nothing short of a horological magic. Yes, it's METAS certified, but more importantly, it's just a well-built, well-designed movement. It features a free-sprung silicon balance, and it delivers a rock-solid 55-hour power reserve. It's accurate, it's durable, and it actually is aesthetically pleasing as well, which is nice when you have a sapphire case back. Now, the elephant in the room is a comparison. it compared to the Rolex Seamaster and how these two stack up. Now, I could do a separate video really comparing multiple different dive watches, but for these two, primarily, both of them hover around the same size. Omega's 42 millimeters, Seamaster's 41. And while that sounds close, the Omega feels larger due to its pronounced bezel and wider lugs, offering a substantial presence on the wrist. The Rolex works a bit more conservatively. It might slide a little easier under a cuff, especially when it comes to this bracelet, which I'll get into here in a little bit. And it obviously has that classic look that most people are used to from the 1960s to today, just a little bit more modern. The Omega Seamaster 300M is obviously more of a modern package as it had been started in the 1990s. But generally they look somewhat similar. Obviously helium escape valve here on the Omega. I could talk about all the obvious things that separate the two of them. The bezel here is a big one though. Rolex opts for Cerachrome, which is a proprietary ceramic known for its scratch resistance. Now Omega in this no-date model goes for aluminum, harkening back to traditional dive watch materials. And while aluminum is softer and it will scratch and fade over time, some collectors prefer its character. They think of it like denim, where it looks better with wear. For me personally, I prefer ceramic, but that's just because in a modern dive watch, I'd like the best technology you can buy. The bracelet's another big comparison between the two. I actually have the sub here on a Hydroflex strap by Artem. I have that link down below if you're interested into that. I typically wear it on something like this. But the bracelet for the Rolex is obviously the Oyster bracelet we all know and love with a glide lock clasp. The Seamaster goes for something very different with a steel mesh bracelet here, which offers a very different look than the more integrated, solidly built multi-link bracelet you find with Omega's standard 300M. And I think it gives it a very elevated look. I love the look of a mesh bracelet on a watch. I've worn a mesh on my Speedmaster a lot and I love the look of it. And I think that this looks really polished. It's got a nice clasp here at the back. The look of everything is just fantastic. I can't detract that from Omega at all. So obviously aesthetically, you can talk about those two. I do have negatives when it comes to this bracelet, which as I've said before, I'll talk about a little bit later. Now inside these watches, the philosophies diverge a little bit more. Rolex has their 3230 inside here. It's an impeccable powerhouse built upon decades of the same base caliber. It's proven. While Omega's using basically all the new tech they can find. They have obviously inside here a coaxial movement and they have the free sprung silicone hairspring. So they're adding more technology that is very new to the base caliber. Obviously you add to that the METAS certification and it looks on paper very attractive. Now I will say the power reserve of 70 hours on the sub is fantastic. If they could increase the power reserve, I think it would make this movement potentially better than the Rolex, especially given the fact that you can see it through the back of the watch. And obviously price-wise, the Seamaster wins by a mile. There is very little discernible difference between these two watches that hit their price points. The no-date sub here is close to 10 grand, so it's pretty expensive versus the Omega here you can buy without any discounts for $6,800. So it's a little bit more accessible than you'd find with the Rolex. Plus you can actually buy it at your AD despite the hype. These are accessible and readily available. You can even buy them oftentimes at a discount, and secondhand, you'll also find them at a further discount. So obviously price-wise, there's no comparison. If you're looking at price and that's why you're making your buying decision, buy the Omega. You will not be spending an extra 4 grand to get 4 grand extra value out of the Rolex. You're pretty much just buying it for aesthetics and you're buying it for the fact that it says Rolex on the watch, if I'm being honest. And there's nothing wrong with that. I certainly bought it for those reasons. It's a classic watch, classic name, classic look, and that's why I wanted it. So the verdict between these two dive watches, honestly, if you prefer heritage and you prefer a slightly slimmer profile, a ceramic bezel, and it's saying Rolex on the watch, or even just the Submariner aesthetic, then obviously you need to go with that. If you're drawn to modern tech, robust build, and a better price tag, the Seamaster definitely deserves your attention. By the way, quick shout out to Exquisite Timepieces in Naples, Florida. They were kind enough to lend this in for me to be able to review. No money's exchanging hands, no favors. They just let me review these watches and I like to shout them out as a result. If you're interested in buying a watch like this one, you should check them out. Now, daily watch, I have worn this for a while now. That's where this watch in my mind starts to fall apart a little bit. While aesthetically, this bracelet looks fantastic, this mesh bracelet, it doesn't have any micro adjust or any on-the-fly adjustment. You just have specific holes that you can put it in. The other problem is that the bracelet actually wraps in on itself here. So as you close it, you actually have all this extra metal here and here. And what you'll find is that this mesh only wants to bend a certain amount. You can see that it doesn't want to bend past like about that. And so what you end up having is, if you have it too loose, you end up with what feels like actually like almost like a bracelet, like a solid metal bracelet with a little bit of flexibility around your wrist, but loose. Or you could tighten it and then you have a really tight feeling of it digging in. You can actually see the marks here of it digging into the bottom of your wrist while also being too loose on the sides of your wrist, because it fits this way and then flares out each side. It's just not flexible enough. The cheaper mesh bracelets I buy on Amazon for like 20 bucks are, you know, aesthetically maybe not as well built and not as well designed, and they don't give the same tight mesh appearance, so they don't look as nice, but they feel a lot better on my wrist. And I would prefer one of those $20 mesh bracelets over this, just because this didn't fit my wrist. Now, if you try this on in a jewelry store and one of these holes is a perfect fit for your wrist, then great, enjoy it. But for me, my massive negative on this watch is that while I love the look of this mesh bracelet, it is not at all comfortable, and I find that I can't find the size for my wrist. So that's a major negative for me. Now, if you swap this onto something else, like say this Artem here, then again, you're back to the comparison of, if you want a fantastic looking dive watch and you don't care that it says Rolex Submariner on it, then this is a fantastic option. The other thing I want to mention here real quick as a negative is the bezel action. I've mentioned this in the 2 other Seamaster videos that I've done. I did a No Time to Die review of the Omega Seamaster, and I also did a Seamaster 300M review. But this bezel action, I'm going to let you listen to it here for a second. That compared to the sub here, compared to the Pelagos, let's say. Now, I know that you can't feel them, but I can feel them. And the Pelagos here is cheaper than the Seamaster, and it's a better bezel action, in my opinion. The sub here is the ultimate bezel action, in my opinion. From all the different bezels that I've handled, it doesn't mean that like you can't buy a Seiko that has a close enough bezel action. It's not worth $10,000 for a bezel action. But this, for $6,800, this bezel action, it makes the bezel itself feel as though it's hollow, that like it's made out of something too light, because it feels like the bezel itself reverberates with the shake, if that makes sense. So you can feel the whole bezel moving, and it feels almost as though the bezel itself is just made out of a cheaper, lighter material. I know that it isn't. It's just how those, you know, clicks are oriented. Maybe they're deeper grooves than they are with something like this, or the spring is just a little bit tighter. But the feeling of operating it is just not, in my mind, very refined. And for $6,800, I feel like that's something that should definitely be fixed. It should be one of the best in the business. Also, the bezel's not the easiest to operate. This like scalloped bezel here, if you haven't already tried one, is really not easy to get your hands on. You kind of have to come from the front and rotate it. There's no grip to it like there is on the knurling here on a Pelagos, or obviously the deep knurling here on a sub. Like if you're wearing gloves, you're really gonna have a hard time rotating this. So that's also obviously a negative for me as well. So to wrap up, Omega has knocked it out of the park aesthetically with this Seamaster. It embodies everything that's great about modern dive watches. It's reliable, it's functional, meticulously built, and visually striking. By removing the date complication, it elevated its excellent design to exceptional. It's cleaner, classier, and frankly, I think just cooler. Comparing it directly to the sub reveals fascinating contrasts. Omega delivers a fantastic package here with innovative tech, magnetic resistance, and a better price point with a more attractive looking movement, but Rolex remains obviously the benchmark for timeless refinement and prestige. They both have their merits and they both have their dedicated camps, but obviously bang for your buck, the Seamaster no doubt is a better package. But here's the takeaway. If you're after a maximum value watch for your money, contemporary styling, hassle-free availability, the Seamaster Diver 300M No Date Black here is a compelling watch and hard to beat. All right, so that's my take, but what about you? Seamaster, Submariner, No Date versus Date? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching. Hit that subscribe button to watch more reviews, and I'll catch you in the next one. Take care.